Welcome to Code with Miracle channel. In last two videos, we learned what is function, why we need function, advantages, and function prototype. If you haven't watched that videos, please go and watch and then watch this video. In this video, we are going to learn types of argument, positional or required arguments, default arguments, keyword arguments, and variable length of arguments. Now let's get started. For positional or required arguments, I'm going to create a function called def, and I'm going to name the function as sample1. So I'm going to specify something like this, and this will take three parameters a, b, c, and in the function body I'm just going to print a, b, and c. This is what I'm going to do. Now let's try to call this function. I'm going to call this function by using function name, that is sample1, and I'm going to pass the values 10, 12, and then I'm going to pass 20. I'm going to save my file, and then I'm going to run my code. I should see 10, 12, 20 in my console. Here you can see it is showing 10, 12, 20. Here you can see the argument type is positional or required argument. So say if you miss any of the argument, on that case you will get an error. Let me try to remove the C argument as I did now. Then I'm going to run my code. This time you will see an error, type error, sample missing one required positional argument C. This is how it works, and we have learned the first thing, so it is done. Let's move into default argument. For that I'm going to create a separate function. For that, first I'm going to copy this function, and then I'm going to paste here, and I'm going to rename the function name to sample2. Default argument are very useful. As the name suggests, default argument means you're giving a default parameter value. Here I'm going to provide it for C with value 10. Let's give 11. I'm going to give 11, and then I'm going to, let me type C equal to 11. Then I'm going to call this function, and first I need to type the function name, that is sample2, and I'm going to pass 10 comma 12. Then I'm going to call the same function again, that is sample2. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass three arguments, 10, 11, and 12. Now if I try to run my code, this should work fine. On the first print I should see 10, 12, 11. On the second print I should see 10, 11, 12. Let's try to run our code. We should see 10, 12, 11, and then 10, 11, 12. Here you can see it is working fine. And you should be careful that your default argument should be at the end. Say if you place your default argument at the beginning or on the middle, you will get an error. Let me try to run my code again. This time you will see an error. Here you can see non-default argument follows default argument. So just keep this in your mind. You should always have default argument as the end of your parameter. I hope this is clear. So this one is done. Now let's move into keyword arguments. For that I'm going to remove this 12 which I have written, and then I'm going to comment this function call so that this function will not get executed. Now let's create another function called sample3. Def sample3. Then I'm going to do the same thing, a comma b comma c. Then I'm going to print a comma b comma c. Let me do this, a comma b comma c. This keyword arguments works in a way that, like, when you call your function, you're just passing the values. In this type, we will be passing the keyword. Keyword is nothing but the parameter name. Let me show that example to you. For that, you need to call the function. So you would be using the function name, which is sample3. Then I'm going to specify a equal to 1, b equal to 2, c equal to 3. Then I'm going to run my code. I should see 1, 2, 3. Here you can see it is working fine. This is how it works. Now let's move into variable length of arguments. Variable length of argument is used when you are not sure about the number of argument which your function will receive. For that, I'm going to create another function which I will call as sample4. First, let's see the example of non-keyword arguments. That is a type of variable length of arguments. For that, you would be using this star args. Here you can specify whatever name which you like to give to your function. Here I'm going to use star args. Then just I'm going to print star args. That's it. Now let's try to call this function sample. The function name is sample4, and then I'm going to pass the values. Here you can pass the values like 10, 12, 13, 14. Like that you can give whatever values you want to pass that to your function. Since it is variable length of argument, it can accept any number of arguments. Now let's try to run our code. We should see 10, 12, 14 and 13. Here you can see. Let me try to save my code. That's why it didn't printed in our terminal. Let me save my code. It is done. Now let's try to run our code again. This time we should see, yeah, 10, 12, 14, 13. This is how star args work. Like it's a type of variable length of argument, variable length of non-keyword argument. So this one is done. Now let's focus on variable length of keyword arguments. Say if you want to pass keyword arguments, on that case this star args will not work. For that, before writing that function, I will show you example. Here I am passing c equal to 13. Now if I try to run my code, here you can see it is throwing an error. Sample4 got an unexpected keyword argument c. So star args will not work in this case. Now let's learn keyword arguments. It is very simple. Let's try to create another function called samplify. For that we need to type def is a keyword to define function. Then I'm going to specify the function name samplify. Then I'm going to pass keyword arguments. To specify keyword arguments, you need to use double star. Then you need to specify the name. Here I'm going to use keyword arguments. Then inside that, once you receive the keyword arguments, it would be a dictionary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a for loop to print key and value of that dictionary. To access key and value of the dictionary, you need to use items function, which is provided by the dictionary in Python. For that, I'm going to first type kwargs, which is my parameter. Then I'm going to use items, which is a function provided by the dictionary. Now let's try to print key value. For that, I'm going to use print. Then I'm going to pass key comma value. That's it. Now let's try to call this function with some keyword argument. The function name is sample 5, and then I'm going to pass a equal to 10, b equal to 20, then c equal to 30. Now let's try to save and run our code. We should see 10, 20, 30 in our terminal. Now let's try to run our code. We should see, here you can see we are saying 10, 20, 30 with the respective keys. So for A it is 10, B it is 20, C it is 30. Thanks for watching.